He came to record history, not become it. Kalen Vance wiped a bead of sweat from his forehead, his thumbs smearing the condensation against the worn leather grip of his camera. The Solara spire was a masterpiece of crystalline architecture, designed to catch the light of the triad suns and refract it into blinding, holy rainbows. It was beautiful. It was also, quite literally, a pressure cooker. Around him, the air shimmered with heat and pheromones. 200 suitors fought for her hand, jostling for position in the grand atrium. There were Viren warriors flexing chameleonic plates that rippled with aggressive purples, and avian scholars from the high roosts shrieking poetry at decibels meant to shatter glass. It was a sensory nightmare. Kalen sighed, checking his light meter. He wasn't here for the politics or the pageantry. He was an archivist, a human relic in a galaxy of holograms, hired because the royal house wanted the gritty texture of analog film. He checked his aperture. F-stop 8, good depth of field. He was invisible here, a fixture of the background, just another piece of equipment. Truth is, he preferred it that way. Being a keen observer can sometimes make you the most observed person in the room, but only if you forget to hide, and Kalen was an expert at hiding in plain sight. High above on the dais, Princess Alara was suffocating. Biologically speaking, her species, the Solari, were empathic resonators. They didn't just hear noise, they felt the intent behind it, like a physical weight on their skin. The desperate ambition of 200 warlords and poets was pressing against her psych barriers like a tidal wave. Her scales, while usually a composed iridescent pearl, were threatening to flush a violent, stressed crimson. She needed to breathe. She needed silence. Breaking protocol with a stiffness that looked like regal disdain but was actually panic, Alara stepped down from the dais. The crowd gasped, a collective intake of breath that vibrated in her teeth. She moved toward the edge of the atrium, seeking the shadow of a massive pillar. That was where she found the human. He didn't bow. He didn't puff out his chest or emit a bioluminescent flare of attraction. He didn't even look up immediately. He was frowning at a small boxy device, muttering something about ISO grain. Alara froze. The silence coming off him was startling. It was a void in the chaos, a cool pocket of air in a furnace. Kalen glanced up then. He blinked, eyes adjusting from his viewfinder. He saw a tall, shimmering being with eyes like liquid mercury and a frantic flutter in the gills along her neck. He didn't see a princess. He saw someone who looked like they were about to pass out from heat stroke. Terran empathy is a funny thing. It bypasses logic and goes straight for the gut. "You look like you're about to melt," Kalen said softly. His voice was a low rumble, lacking the screeching high frequencies of the suitors. It was jarringly normal. Alara stared at him. Her translators caught the concern, but her biological sensors caught something else. Honest, unvarnished instinct. There was no agenda, no performance. In a galaxy of performances, the princess fell for the cameraman's complete lack of one. "The heat," she managed, her vocal cords tight. "It is overwhelming." Kalen nodded, shifting his weight. Outro, he didn't make a scene. He simply reached into the chaotic mess of his cargo pocket and pulled out a crinkly silver packet, a hydration pouch. Standard issue, lukewarm, and utterly unglamorous. "Here," he said, cracking the seal and extending it. "It's electrolyte water. Not exactly royal nectar, but it'll stop your blood sugar from crashing. You guys have blood sugar, right? Or blood equivalent?" He winced. "Sorry, not the time for xenobiology questions. Just drink." Alara took the pouch. Her fingers brushed his. The contact was electric, not the stinging shock of a Vern sting whip, but a grounding, solid warmth. Human skin was strange, soft, dry, radiating a steady, furnace-like heat that somehow felt safer than the erratic flares of her own kind. She took a sip. It tasted like synthesized lemon and plastic. It was the best thing she had ever tasted. "You are not competing," she stated. the crimson flush in her cheeks receding back to a calm, pale blue. Kaelin laughed, a short, self-deprecating huff. Me? No, I'm just the cameraman. I document the history. I don't make it. He turned back to his gear, fiddling with a lens cap, completely missing the way Alara's secondary eyelids clicked open, a biological sign of intense fascination. Authenticity often resonates more powerfully than curated perfection. While the suitors screamed for her attention, this small human was ignoring her to focus on his craft, offering her care simply because she was a living thing in distress. "You are different," Ilara murmured, the chaos of the room fading into a dull roar behind her. "I'm just human," Kaelin shrugged, bringing the viewfinder to his eye to capture a shot of a particularly angry avian suitor. "We're basically space dandelions. We just sort of show up and try to be useful." He didn't see her smile. It was small, genuine, and terrifyingly rare. "Useful," she repeated, testing the word. 200 suitors fought for her hand. She chose to stand in the shadow of the one capturing the footage. The human bond is built on the little things: the shared water, the comfortable silence, the refusal to be anything other than what you are. Ilara watched him work, watched the way his brow furrowed in concentration, and felt the heavy, suffocating weight of the ceremony lift. She realized then that true connection requires dropping the performance we put on for others. And she was done performing. Utter authenticity is the only currency that matters to a royal board of lies. The fanfare returned, a blaring, brassy wall of sound that made Alara's gills itch. The High Arbiter, a creature mostly made of ceremonial silk and stiff whiskers, stepped forward. His voice boomed through the spire, demanding that the princess fulfill the strategic alliance. It was time to choose the strongest, the loudest, the most influential. Ilara looked at the line of suitors. They were all glowing or shouting or vibrating with calculated majesty. Then she looked back at the shadow of the pillar where the human was currently trying to scrape a bit of dried protein bar off his sleeve. She didn't return to the throne. Instead, she raised a hand, signaling for silence. The atrium went still. Kaelin stopped scraping his sleeve and looked up. His camera lens still pointed halfway toward a Vern warrior's left foot. "I have made my selection," Ilara announced. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried a weight that the warlord's shouts lacked. She walked. She didn't walk toward the general with the star maps or the prince with the singing crystals. She walked straight toward the man with the chipped plastic camera case and the slightly wrinkled jumpsuit. Kaelin felt his heart do a strange, panicked little dance against his ribs. He looked behind him, certain there was a secret duke hiding in the masonry. There wasn't. Just a very old ventilation grate. Princess?" Kaelin stammered as she stopped inches from him. You're blocking the light. I mean the shot. The shot is over there." She didn't move. She reached out and took the camera from his hands, setting it carefully, almost reverently, on a nearby stone ledge. "The recording is finished," she said. The High Arbiter scurried over, his whiskers twitching in frantic Morse code. "Your Radiance. This is a technician, a record keeper, a Terran. This provides no strategic advantage." Ilara didn't look at the Arbiter. She kept her eyes on Kaelin, who was currently turning a shade of pink that would have made a Terran sunset look dull. "He offered me water when I was thirsty," Ilara said, her voice shimmering with a sudden, deep warmth. "He offered me silence when the world was screaming. He saw me when everyone else was looking at a crown." Kaelin rubbed the back of his neck, looking utterly bewildered. "I mean, you just looked like you were having a really bad day. Honestly, I think anyone would have. Well, maybe not these guys." He gestured vaguely at the suitors, who were now vibrating with a mix of confusion and indignation. Truth is, Kaelin wanted to bolt. The spotlight was a physical weight, a heat far more intense than the Triad suns. But then he saw the way Alara's hands were trembling, just a tiny rhythmic shiver in her long, elegant fingers. She was terrified. She was dropping her own performance, standing exposed before 1,000 worlds, all for the sake of a man who carried a toolkit instead of a sword. Human instinct is a powerful, messy thing. It's what makes us stay when every logical nerve ending says to run. Kalen took a breath. He reached out, moving slowly so he wouldn't startle her, and took her hand. His skin was rough, calloused from years of handling gear, but to Ilara it felt like an anchor in a storm. Her scales shifted, a soft, contented violet hue spreading from her neck to her fingertips. Her dual hearts began to slow, matching the steady rhythmic thrum of his pulse. "Are you sure about this?" Kalen whispered, his voice barely audible over the rising murmurs of the court. "I don't know the first thing about being a royal. I still have a mortgage on a small freighter." Ilara squeezed his hand. The touch was firm, a sacred pact made in the middle of a circus. "You know how to see," she whispered back. "That is all I require. True connection requires dropping the performance we put on for others. It requires being brave enough to be ordinary in an extraordinary universe." Kalen Vance looked at the cameras, the sleek, high-tech hovering drones that were now broadcasting his stunned face to 3 sectors. He realized then that he was trading his professional invisibility for a royal partnership, accepting that honest connection is worth a terrifying spotlight. He didn't look like a hero. He looked like a man who was very worried about where he'd left his lens cap. But as Ilara leaned her head slightly toward his shoulder, her iridescent skin glowing in the soft light of the fading suns, he realized he didn't need to be a hero. He just needed to be Kalen. He smiled, a small, lopsided thing that didn't belong in a palace. And for the first time in her life, the princess felt like she was finally home.